The Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. I hope your Tuesday, actually it's Wednesday. I hope your Wednesday's going pretty well. Today on the show, it's a known fact that recovering from addiction is really hard for thousands of people around the state. Later in the hour, we'll speak with someone who is in recovery from addiction and is now helping others in Oakland County navigate the difficulties of substance abuse. But first, nationally, immigration has been a big topic of conversation, largely due to the tough-on-immigration rhetoric, which is a big part of former President Donald Trump's speeches and events. Now we're seeing some of that rhetoric influencing local politics in Michigan. That's because on Monday, Livingston County commissioners unanimously approved a resolution permitting the sheriff's office to track interactions with undocumented immigrants, no matter the nature of the contact. The Metro reached out to a Livingston County commissioner for comment on his support for the resolution, but we have not heard back yet. Now, here to discuss the matter is Christine Sauvé. She is the Policy Engagement and Communications Manager at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. Christine, welcome to the Metro.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, what exactly is the language around the resolution from Livingston County?
Yeah, so Monday night, the Livingston County Board of Commissioners voted unanimously to pass this resolution, and it requires the Livingston County Sheriff's Office to document contacts with undocumented immigrants regardless of the nature of the contact. And then they'll have to provide reports of those contacts to the Board of Commissioners. So we don't have yet more details on exactly how this will be carried out, but it could have far-reaching consequences for anyone who is perceived to be an immigrant who comes into contact with sheriff deputies.
So basically, just to sum it up, they're trying to increase local surveillance of undocumented individuals.
Exactly. And we've seen similar show me your papers laws in other states, but this is the first municipality in Michigan to pass such an extreme anti-immigrant measure. And so we're very concerned about it.
Yeah, and I just want to note as well, for those who may not know, Livingston County sits between Lansing and Detroit, just north of Ann Arbor. Big cities are like Howe, Fowlerville, Heartland, and Brighton. So as we continue on, is this surprising? Are other counties in Michigan kind of doing the same thing or similar things or having similar conversations?
Well, the good news is that Michigan actually has a strong reputation for having many welcoming communities. Immigrants and refugees have long been cherished community members in Michigan, making important contributions to the arts, to our economy, to our democracy. And so the good news is that most Michigan communities are looking at this issue another way. We just concluded National Welcoming Week, a time when local governments across America and across Michigan celebrated the contributions of immigrant residents and also highlighted the ways that we can advance inclusion of newcomers so that we're all moving forward together.
And, you talked a little bit about, just the extreme nature of it. So why is it so extreme?
Yeah, the most alarming thing about this is that it treads into territory that local law enforcement just really has no business in. Mm-hmm. The courts have found time and time again that immigration enforcement is really the purview of the federal government. And there's many good reasons for that. It really undermines public safety by destroying trust between immigrant communities and local law enforcement when local law enforcement tries to get involved in immigration enforcement. And then ultimately that leads to all of us actually being less safe. Immigration law is so complex, so complicated. The training and the cost that it would require to help local law enforcement officers get up to speed on all the different statuses and ways that folks come to this country, it would be too difficult. And so that really is the expertise of federal immigration enforcers. And then the other reason that, so many local law enforcement have agencies have already recognized is, again, it really destroys that trust between immigrant community members and the local agency. And most police agencies recognize that they need immigrant witnesses and victims to come forward, whether or not they are themselves lawfully present. If they become less likely to report crime and provide intelligence, because of fear for themselves or for their family members, again, regardless of their status, many folks who have legal permanent status become very fearful of interacting with law enforcement when these type of measures are passed. And then that just really, again, makes all of us less safe because the local law enforcement agencies then are less able to do their job.
And Christine, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Christine Sauvé, the Policy Engagement and Communications Manager at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. We're speaking about a new resolution that was passed in Livingston County to increase surveillance on undocumented immigrants. Now, Christine, something that I've followed along with, especially with local government and state government, but local government in general, is collecting of data, the importance of having data, the importance of using data to track different things. So can we talk about how data is used in this sense and how it could be viewed in a negative way?
Yeah, and it's really I think most Michiganders are in support of good data, and that's not the issue at play here. Really, the issue is the process of how someone would go about obtaining this data. Mm-hmm. And in order to find out someone's immigration status, again, they're going to start treading into the territory of potentially racial profiling. So, again, given that complexity of immigration law, this really puts our local law enforcement officers in an impossible position. In those split seconds, they're going to have to choose between upholding the county resolution or risk a lawsuit against them that could threaten them with personal liability for constitutional violations. Because, again, you cannot tell someone's immigration status just by looking at them. And so what happens is law enforcement officers then may end up relying on race or religion or what they think might be someone's national origin, and all of that is impermissible and constitutes racial profiling. So, most local law enforcement agencies have recognized this and see that liability. And then, again, the cost of that liability for, potential litigation. And that's why most agencies have not chosen this route.
Okay.
And it's, in the end, it's a little ironic because Livingston is a constitutional county, yet this policy could actually lead sheriffs into territory where they might be violating the U.S. Constitution.
Which is like one of the, our segue here. That's where we're going to start blending into. And you started to talk about it and touch on it because historically, Livingston County has been viewed in one way. So why do you think right now we're seeing the rhetoric that we're seeing coming up, the heated discussions that we're seeing? Why is it happening, in your opinion, in Livingston County right now?
Livingston County is a majority white county. It has a very small immigrant population. Historically, Livingston County, sadly, was the home of the Ku Klux Klan. So there is a dark history there. And so sometimes we see these measures emerge in places that really aren't even impacted by the issues that they're supposedly aiming to address. So, a lot of this goes along with, as you mentioned, the increased anti-immigrant rhetoric in this moment. So, the good news that I can point out is that, there are strong partners in Livingston County that do oppose this measure. At the discussion Monday night, there were supporters of the resolution were outnumbered 2-1 by compassionate Livingston County residents who did not want to see the county go this route. And, business leaders were really trying to change the reputation of Livingston County away from that dark history and towards a brighter history. And unfortunately, this really set the county back.
So, Christine, if someone here is here without documentation, people may think, or, those out there may think you have no right to be here because you're not a U.S. citizen. So we should be surveilling and removing them from the country. So we're thinking about this side of the argument. What would you say to someone who presents that argument?
Well, that is the purview of the federal immigration enforcement officers. So that is their job, and that is what they're doing. Immigrants do have rights while they're in the United States. They are protected by the U.S. Constitution, which protects the rights of all persons in the United States, regardless of citizenship status. So folks still have the right to due process. They have the right to legal counsel if they are facing a criminal charge. They have the right against unreasonable searches and seizures. And they also have civil rights protections. So, again, it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of race or national origin. And then immigrants also have language access rights, which means institutions that receive federal money, and now all Michigan state agencies as well, must provide meaningful access to services in a language that one understands. And so that means there should be interpretation and translation. So as we're looking at, answering questions and calls from immigrant residents in Livingston County, we are, uplifting those rights. So those rights protected by the Constitution have not changed with the passage of this resolution. They still have the right to an interpreter. If the officer is communicating with them, they do not have to answer questions. They have the right to remain silent. They don't have to consent to unreasonable searches. That said, we do recommend that individuals don't lie. So if they are asked for their name, they should provide their full legal name. They can ask if they're being detained. And if they're not, they can ask if they may leave. A lot of this will end up playing out in the courts. So folks still, again, have those constitutional rights, and they can also call a tip line that the ACLU, our partners at the ACLU of Michigan, offers. That number is 313-208-7048. And anyone who thinks they may have had a harmful or discriminatory interaction with Livingston County Sheriff deputies, they can confidentially report those concerns and interactions.
Christine, one more time, that number.
313-208-7048.
Christine Sauvé is the Policy Engagement and Communications Manager at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. I want to say thank you so much for breaking this down, letting us know what is going on. Thank you for joining the Metro.
Thank you.
Again, the Metro reached out to Livingston County for comment. We are still interested in hearing their perspective on why the commissioners passed this resolution. It's the Metro. Today, expect isolated showers around 11 a.m., mostly cloudy, a high around 75. Thursday, mostly cloudy, high around 76 degrees. Friday, mostly cloudy with a high near 75. And your weekend forecast, Saturday and Sunday, a chance of showers both days, mostly cloudy, highs around 62 degrees. Coming up, the Q Line is now run by the Regional Transit Authority. We'll talk about what the consequences of that decision might be with WDET's Rihanna Tinsley. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Detroit's Q Line, the 3-mile-long streetcar running on Woodward, has transferred its operations to the Regional Transit Authority. WDET's Rihanna Tinsley spoke with Ben Skupka, the head of the RTA, about this change. She joins us now to talk about what the change in operation means for transit in the region. Brianna, welcome back to the Metro.
Thanks for having me, Tia.
Of course. So, Brianna, how did Detroit get the Q line in the first place?
All right, so I'm going to try and give you the short version, but M1 Rail, the nonprofit that currently runs the system, their plan initially was to build a rail line from downtown to 8 Mile along Woodward, and they got a lot of support and money from private investors and public funds. But at the last minute, federal officials withdrew their support of the rail because they wanted a bus system that would serve the city and suburbs instead. But private investors were still on board with the project, and the Q line was built. Although later, M1 Rail did receive $25 million in federal funding with the condition that the RTA was built.
Interesting. So now that the RTA has taken over the Q line, for those who don't know, what is the RTA? What does it do?
So the RTA can be best described as a coordinating body. They mainly focus on organizing and improving current public transit systems and helping them work together. And you can see this with the implementation of some of their offered services.
We can add this to our growing list of services that we're providing to the region with the DAX Airport Express Bus and the D2A2 Ann Arbor Express Bus. So just kind of continuing to provide different programs and deliver services for the region to try and improve transit.
So when I hear that, I just think to myself, there are now more options that are available to folks. So now that's what we're seeing with the RTA's response to what's happening.
So it does open up some more money for the RTA. But according to them, since the inception of the Q line, in 2014, it was always the plan not for M1 Rail not to run the system forever. And so, as it was mentioned, the RTA was established around the same time. So they kind of understood that eventually the authority would take over for the rail, but the system does open up the rail to more funding.
As a government entity, there's state transit funding and some federal transit funding that the Q line is now eligible for. So that helps to continue to stabilize the funding for that service now and into the future.
And to just bounce around here just for a little bit, Brianna, because honestly, how many people are actually riding the Q line?
So the Q line had more than 1 million riders last year, and ridership is already up 25% more. So they're expecting to reach record numbers by the end of this year. All
right. So what's the future of the Q line as it changes to RTA operations? Since you talked a little bit about it being already in the future idea or future plan that the RTA would take over the operation. So what are we seeing here?
So we don't really know yet, but as I mentioned earlier, the transition does open the Q line up to more federal funding dollars that they couldn't access when they were under the nonprofit. Okay. And that money can go towards things like improvements and maybe sometime in the future an expansion. But as of right now, the RTA does not have any plans for that, nor have they made any such statements that they will expand.
We definitely see the Q line as an absolute catalyst for being able to advance discussions about transit in Southeast Michigan. And I think as a publicly owned service now, it creates a lot of opportunities for greater connection and collaboration with existing transit services. We'll say we don't have any current plans on expansion, but we are very, very committed to exploring all the options that could be before us.
And will riders notice any changes, Brianna?
RTA officials say there won't be any major noticeable changes. Hours will remain the same. Fare will remain free. The only change you'll see is RTA logo on the side of the trains.
All right. And before I let you go, have you ridden the Q line?
Oh, I ride it all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
And you're a fan of it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's actually very useful when I have to do things downtown, getting from Midtown to downtown for certain stories. So, yeah, it's very useful for me.
I was going to say it's probably a reporter's friend.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was WDET's Brianna Tinsley. Brianna, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Taking a look at news, the city of Detroit plans to use more than $12.5 million in state and federal grants to improve safety along the Gratiot corridor between 8 Mile Road and downtown Detroit. It's part of the Biden administration's efforts to address dangerous roads and intersections. And just thinking about this news clip, I recently just saw that there was a crash there at Gratiot and 8 Mile. So definitely something that is needed in that area. However, coming up nationally, overdose deaths have been declining. We'll speak with someone who has struggled with addiction and is working with Oakland County to help people get sober. You all stay right there. It's the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Overdose deaths are down in the U.S. for the first time since 2020. From April of last year to April of this year, overdose deaths dropped by 10% to just over 100,000. While the numbers are trending down both nationally and in Michigan, they are still extremely high over the last 2 decades. But we're just talking about data. What does it look like and feel like to be addicted to substances? And what does it take to help people get clean? To talk now about that, we have Paul Shankin here. He is a recovery support specialist with Oakland County, and he himself has recovered from addiction. He's here now to discuss these things as well as his own experiences. Paul, thank you so much for taking time out to join us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So you grew up in Warren in the early 80s. And during that time, there were a lot of people addicted to drugs around you. What was the environment like, and what were your motivations for experimenting with drug? Before we get to your answer, I think about how glamorized that time was in the 80s on movies and TVs, and just how they talk about it being just this party time. So if you could just give us that environment and some of those things happening.
Well, it was the 1980s. It was a wonderful time. A lot of nostalgia around that. Yeah, it was, substance abuse was just always, it was always present. It's always been a part of my story. So, yeah, just looking back, I mean, it just like sociably acceptable is what I remember, you know, with the adults as a child. So, I mean, like a lot of my childhood is, I mean, it's foggy, but as far as I can remember adults, you know, being involved with substance use.
Yeah. And you talked about before the emptiness that you felt trying to resolve some of the things that you were going through. Now that you've recovered and helped others recover and go through the process, what were you missing in life that made you feel as if this is something that I need to do? What were you feeling emotionally? Were you looking for something?
For me, I think personally it was discipline.
Mm-hmm.
That was the main principle that was lacking in my life. And I say that lightly. Everybody with substance use disorder, their experience is different. I got really heavy into martial arts when I got into recovery, and that's what really opened the door and made this stick, is what it was. So, yeah, and then like the emotional balance, everything, you straighten out mentally and spiritually, and then like physically. I mean, spiritually, mentally, and physically, and then it's like everything kind of falls into place.
Yeah, mind, body, soul. Just get those things
aligned.
Mind, body, soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I think about that, I think about you taking the step to do martial arts, really getting into it. If you can't just go more into the routine of it all and how the routine kind of helps support what you were going through.
With recovery?
With martial arts and recovery,
okay,
and
so
kind of building that routine.
I found out when I was really young in the 1980s that my uncle was a grandmaster black belt. His name is Don Shankin, and he took over School United Taekwondo in Warren, and this school has been there since the 1960s, and it's still going. You know, and he when I discovered this, it was like he was a superhero to me. So fast forward into 2017. Everything kind of fell into place to where I was going to get on this path, and getting into martial arts was the most difficult thing I've ever tried to do.
Yeah.
I mean, in every way possible. So, I mean, just going to these classes eventually evolved into me waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning, doing intense cardio, doing stretching, doing like spiritual readings, and then go into like recovery support meeting before it's even like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then I do the work day, and my life is very structured today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's full of a routine. The whole day is a routine, basically.
Yeah. And when we think about addiction, of course, it's not easy to simply as going to treatment center. You talked a little bit about your own experience and how it's different from person to person about, what's going on. So you even went to jail. That's an anecdote. You even went to jail, told yourself, I'm not going to do this anymore. When I get out, I'm going to be clean. You went back when you did eventually got out. So how did you navigate your addiction? Why was it so hard to quit? Even for some of the most dedicated folk, why was it so difficult?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It is such a great question, and I think it's really unique for each person. I think the answer to that is the uniqueness when it comes to this. And for me, I mean, and the deck was set. I mean, it was just set, and there was just this lack of ability to cope with reality, and I think as a result of that, like you were talking about a little earlier, like there was always this, I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. Even in a room with a crowd full of people, I just did not feel, it's always felt like I've lived in a hostile environment and everything's a potential threat to me. Mm-hmm. Everything, that's like my mindset around things. And I think that's what set the tone for it. Because then once I used substance, regardless of what it was, it minimized that. It took that away, and then I felt complete.
Yeah, you felt like everything was kind of even again, and you just, So eventually, you went to a 12-step program. It helped you quit. Some folks who go into the 12-step program, it may not work for them, but for others, it does. So we think about the 12-step program. We think about being in a community. For you, was the community of the program what helped you get through it?
Yes. 12-step fellowships did work for me, and I do understand. And it's true, it does not work for everybody. I've seen people go to 12-step fellowships that probably should have never walked in the doors of it. There's other ways they could have done it that helps. So, but for me, there was just a network of people that I like to say that literally felt like they were waiting for me, when I walked into them rooms, and they knew exactly what to do with me. That when I was really high up emotionally, they knew how to bring me right back down. When I was really low, they know how to bring me right up, and they just created this balance.
Yeah. And going into a space with open arms and having people who are there, not judging you, this is unconditional support from folk. And when you're in the program, so if you can, go into the idea and the importance of unconditional support, especially when you're in programs set up to help you get clean.
Yeah, it's absolutely necessary. You don't know where anybody's been, what they've been through, what their experiences have, what's happened to them, and recovery. It's about growing as an individual. Living by principle, but also demonstrating, these principles. And when somebody new walks in the door, I mean, shame on anybody, that shames them, pushes them out the door, tries to, take advantage of their, vulnerability. Like they need to be welcomed with open arms and absolute kindness. I mean, I share it at the meetings all the time. There's no better gift than kindness that you can give. That is, like top of the line.
I wear a shirt that says kindness is free.
That's
so
it.
It's free. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Paul Shankin. He helps people navigate drug rehabilitation services in Oakland County. We're talking about how to help people quit addiction. And that's such, when I see, quit addiction, or that's not, something that you could just do. You can't just quit addiction. So when we talk about approaching it, how do you, especially when you're helping others and you're in support of others, how are you approaching these conversations, especially when we're talking about addressing their addictions and finding ways to navigate through it?
One of the things that really works is the principle of like based on attraction, not promotion. Somebody like people seeing me in recovery that are out there, there's things that are appealing to them. What those things are, I don't know. I have to get to know the person and what or what not. But it's always helpful when I meet with a new person and I'm able to recognize my struggles within them, and I can do that in like 3 to 5 minutes if I just have an open conversation and they open up. I can feel where they're at, and I got it, and then I start sharing my experience, and that just changes the game. The whole door opens, everything, and we meet each other right where we're at. And
Paul, going the self-awareness, the self-assurance, you understand who you are, you have this grounded feeling with yourself, especially now, post-addiction recovery. If you can't just go into what it means to have this autonomy, self-autonomy now, and being able to recognize certain things within yourself and seeing it in others and saying, hey, I've been through that, let me help you through. How do you feel about that autonomy?
What do you mean?
How do you feel about owning yourself, having ownership of yourself and your mind and your body and your soul?
Yeah, it is absolutely necessary. But there's a lot of work,
Yeah.
That's involved with that. And in my case, it's recovery, it's martial arts, it's working and helping with people. I mean, I found my pathway, but that it's not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Depending on who they are, what they're, what. I ask people a lot of times that that are new that I work with is like, when you were a child, what did you fall in love with? What was your first love? Before you were even like attracted to men or women or whatever, like what was the thing that you were really into? And 90% have no idea how to answer that question. It's like, it's unbelievable.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I don't know for myself. I don't know. So the other week you were speaking with producer Sam Corey, and you talked about the importance of people who are addicted to substances, both having love and accountability. You just talked about having that alignment of mind, body, and soul. So why is it so important to have those two together, happening simultaneously? Like, just they have to happen together or it's not going to work.
That is recovery. That is it. That's the combination. And with the recovery, I mean, there's hope. There's hope that we can beat this. I mean, we're in this fentanyl crisis nationwide. It's killing people every day. It's killed family members of mine, close family members, and if we don't have hope, it's a wrap.
Yes. And the number of people dying from overdose is going down in the U.S. It is, but the number remains super, super high. We know there are still tons of people who need help. So what do you think is going on? What do you think? Do you think more people are lonely or more isolated? Do you think there's an explanation, or you just the sign of the times?
Why that it's so high, or that it's going down?
That it's remaining, that so many people are still, just struggling and really, really going through it.
I think it's still, these are the consequences of the prescription medication being overprescribed in the early 2000s, and these are the consequences from that. But that's also a small fraction. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the root cause, but then like society, finances, personal things, people not having, not knowing how to live life. I mean, really is what it is. Everybody's out here just trying to wing it, trying to figure it out. There's no rule books for this. I mean, there is if you look, but for the most part, most of us are just trying to wing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you now work for Oakland County as a recovery specialist. Can you talk a little bit about what you do to help people, especially just having your own personal experiences? Is it easier because you have your own personal experiences, or is it sometimes a difficulty?
No, it's absolutely necessary. I was actually handpicked out of another organization that I was working in this field of work. And today I work for the Alliance of Coalitions for Healthy Communities. We work in recovery support, prevention, wellness, and we're also in a partnership with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. And I'm a supervisor in this crisis response unit that we have with the Oakland County Sheriff's. And in that work, we're responding to like live overdose scenes, post-overdose scenes, and trying to address people, meet them where they're at, and help them get into treatment. And what's like really unique about this situation is, I wouldn't say it's the first time, but it's still very new that you have law enforcement and a person or people with lived experience in recovery that are now teaming up and going into the community and meeting up with people who are suffering and trying to come up with a solution together to get help for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here, my mind is just like, this is amazing to hear that these things are actually happening in a real way on the ground, where we hear about, this program just started with this, or this program started with that, but we don't know if there is actually mobility happening on the road, on the ground, and you're telling us about them. So if you can't go into that a little bit, I know we're running close on time here, but before I let you go, if you can go into that partnership and that working with the police and going out and seeing what's happening, what is the interaction like, and how much are you seeing the police force learning from you all as you all are out there?
It's really interesting. So I'll use yesterday, for example. Partner and I, he's a sheriff deputy. We're in our war room, we call it, at the Alliance in Troy, and we get a call, referral from one of the organizations that deals with substance use disorder and mental health, and they have a client that's trying to get into treatment. So him and I, we literally go pick her up from underneath a bridge on 8 Mile in John R. yesterday. And we get her in the car, we take her out to a treatment facility. We do all the navigating to get her approved through Access and the stuff that you need for the funding to happen. Get her set up, she gets there. Took like half the day, we leave there, we're feeling really good, and then I get the call, at night, she's like, I left, this is at 10 o'clock, and she's back, in the same area, and I'm up. It's almost 12:30 last night trying to navigate this lady to get back into treatment. So that all the way up until this morning, she's now back at the place. She's trying to get into treatment, and that's one case of working with people with the sheriffs. I mean, it's unique, but every situation we do is different depending on what's going on. I mean, we meet people where they're at. That's it.
Yeah, I know because we could go into it for so much longer, but we're run out of time here. No worries at all, because we really, really got into it, and I really want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. Paul Shankin, a recovery specialist, support specialist with Oakland County. Paul, thank you so much for joining us on the show, sharing your story with us, and I'm hoping that someone's listening out there and it helped them a little bit. Oh, of course. Go ahead.
So if you live in Oakland County and you're in crisis, it doesn't matter what the crisis is, please call our crisis number at 248-463-5111. That's 248-463-5111.
Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. Quick look at the weather forecast today. Isolated showers, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 75 degrees. Thursday, mostly cloudy, high around 76. And Friday, mostly cloudy, a high near 75. Quick look at sports. The Tigers beat the Tampa Bay Rays 2-1 at Comerica Park and move closer to a playoff berth. They lead the Twins by 2 games in the American League wild card race. Any combination of Detroit wins and Minnesota losses that equals 4 will send the Tigers to the postseason for the first time in 10 years. I cannot wait. I'm super excited to see this race right now to the playoffs. And the Red Wings open the NHL preseason tonight against the Blackhawks in Chicago. Coming up, we'll talk about a new exhibit that highlights Detroit in the 60s and the artist who carefully documented the city. You stay right there. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Now, telling the story of Detroit to folks who aren't familiar with the city can be a little tricky. Oftentimes, its history is glossed over, leaving the artist who helped document movements and shape Detroit lost to time. Enter Leni Sinclair. A German native, Sinclair moved to Detroit with relatives, met John Sinclair, the jazz musician, and began the Detroit Artist Workshop in 1964. Sinclair made sure to have her camera in tow and document everyday life in Detroit from the mid-60s until now. Next month, the Scarab Club will host an exhibition titled Leni Sinclair Retrospective, and the exhibit will highlight some of Sinclair's most memorable works. Joining us in the studio to chat more about the exhibit, we have Dalia Reyes. Dalia is the gallery director of the Scarab Club Dalia. Welcome to the Metro.
Thank you so much for having me, Tia. I love being here.
Yeah, super excited to have you back. So who was Leni Sinclair? For those who don't know, I went and looked her up. She's really fascinating.
Well, Leni Sinclair is, to me, a cultural icon.
Yeah.
She's a documentarian. She's an activist. She's documented so many important parts of like our culture and history and music history, Detroit. So I'm just so happy that the Scarab Club is able to honor her, with this exhibition, a solo show.
I know.
Yes.
And, we talked a little bit because you just talked a little bit about the beams. We're going to get to that later on in the show, but this is something that you all do at the Scarab Club. You make sure that you highlight those who have been important to Detroit, remain important to Detroit, but have such a long legacy and history here that has often gone glossed over. So why did you guys choose to highlight Leni Sinclair this year?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, John Sinclair signed the beam in 2001. So he's been involved. So Leni Sinclair, I mean, I've had an exhibition with her in 2001, actually, no, 2021.
Yeah.
So it just seemed like she's a shoo-in, of course. And she's an amazing supporter of artists. And she's the most, you'll hear from everybody, she's the most humble photographer, artist, or whatever you want to call her. But, you know, she's just an amazing figure, influential figure, who's documented so much. And I think even though you can go online, you can see tons of interviews of Leni Sinclair. She's been published in, you know, the Rolling Stones, Cream magazine, but she's still just like, you know, I just had a camera and I was there, and there's just such a modesty, you know, thing about her. But we just want to elevate her while we can, you know, like, so I'm just so happy to do this. So
And I've been doing a lot of just random research on my own, but just doing research, civil rights in the city of Detroit, some of the big players and some of the important figures in the city of Detroit. And I think about Aretha Franklin, who was doing things, you know, Bethel Baptist Church. And I think about some of the other people who were here as well, working really hard, musicians, artists. And she was documenting those musicians and those artists. And oftentimes a lot of the portraits and photos that we see may have been shot by Leni Sinclair, and we don't know that. So if we can just go into the importance of Leni Sinclair and the importance to her in civil rights, during the civil rights movements here in the city of Detroit. You know, she was the founder of the White Panther Party. Right.
So her and John co-founded the White Panther Party during their time. I think they first met in Wayne State. So Wayne State, right here. So, and also she was a huge jazz supporter. So I think being involved with John, being in the mix of, like, you know, the underground music scene, she got exposed to a lot of amazing things, a lot of great musicians, the MC5, John Coltrane, you know, she's shot Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. So everybody that was, like, happening at that time, like, she was somehow in the room and, you know, not using a flash and really honoring everybody that she documented. I think there was an interview where she said that, you know, the people that she would shoot, like, I was shooting them because I was in love with them. I wanted to capture them. So I just think it's I don't know how, if her story was like, this is what I want to be and this is what I want to be known for, or versus like, this is just who I am and this is who I want, this is what I want to do with my art. You know, because there are different kinds of artists out there that kind of have that, I don't know, like a different air about them because they've done so much. And she doesn't have that, like, pretentious or any kind of, like, you can actually talk to her. And I was actually with her last night and I was trying to get her to come here. She's like, you know, very, like, soft-spoken and modest. And I just feel like it's like talking to Stevie Wonder. Like, you've seen so many things.
Yes.
I just think we would be fools to not give her, you know, her this opportunity. So I think I'm so excited.
Which I think is just, once again, I just think to myself, here's this young German woman who moved here, you know, at a young age and fell into just this, like you said, happening scene in Detroit and just documented all of it. If you're just joining us, we're chatting with Dalia Reyes. We're chatting about Dalia's last exhibition with the Scarab Club in Detroit. So that's the thing that we're transitioning to. So this huge giant in the community that has documented so much of Detroit's history is your last exhibition with the Scarab Club. So this is a big thing. So, number one, you're stepping down.
Yes.
When are you stepping down?
My last day will be the opening of Leni Sinclair's Detroit Leni exhibition.
Wow.
So I know it's a bittersweet thing, but I think it's also really exciting, and I'm so happy to end it with Leni. I do consider her a friend, and you know, I try to support as much as I can, just like she is. Like, I want to support people who have been supporting without asking for anything. Like, they're not out there trying to be, like, of course they have to feed their families, they have to be out there, but there's like this, you want to lift them up, they deserve them, you want to give them their flowers while you can, and they're local. Like, of course, like if Rodriguez was here, he would be, you know, somebody I'd want to help too. You know, it's just like that kind of same level of importance, cultural importance.
So, you know, along with the announcement, so I was following along social media, I saw the announcement, and one of the reasons why you were stepping down from the Scarab Club was to take take a look at your own health.
Yes.
So you had a health scare and you said, you know what, I think I have to take care of myself. So can we talk about the importance of taking a step back, looking at yourself and saying, you know what, I know things are important in life right now. I know I love this and I love that, but I might have to lose some things in order to take care of me.
Yes, I think, like I have an autoimmune, I have a hypothyroidism. So I am tired like all the time. And I feel like I've been in this kind of field for like 20 years. Yeah. And I just feel like I need a little bit of a break. Yeah. I don't know if it's like a burnout feeling or just like, no, I think my body like is asking me to slow down. I've also recently I've had a family member that is going through chemo, and I kind of put things in perspective for me about health and family and just being around them. And, I want to contribute to my community, but I also want to like help myself too. It's like making sure I'm like not falling apart.
Exactly.
So, so I think it's a little bit hard because I don't ever want to quit anything or leave anything, but I also want to have the energy to give my all. Like I feel like I used to have way more energy than I do now. So that whole part is a little bit, it's tough. It's tough, but I also think it's an important decision. And a part of it's like, okay, my growth is that, I feel like I've given a lot and I'm going to continue to give, but at this point I need to kind of take a step back and be okay with things happening, without me there or to step back and to kind of work on I'm also an artist. So I'm an artist, I support music. There are so many other projects that I want to do that require way more time and energy than I'm able to give right now. So it's like, okay, I'm just kind of weighing the options. And I feel like I'm so grateful with the Scarab Club for the opportunity to have been, the gallery director, to have given this time with them. And I hope that, the work has taken us in a different way, taken us, I guess, through a new ground. Is what I'm hoping for. Yeah, is that by having diverse exhibitions, by including or having music and art intersect in different ways, or partnerships with organizations, those are all things that I think that are kind of, I don't want to say like uniquely Detroit, but like Detroit is so interdisciplinary, and so I was so happy to have that opportunity to do something in a place like that isn't just an art gallery. It's a hub. Yeah. So I was able to be a part of that. So I'm really grateful to them, for that opportunity for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Dalia. And we have about 30 seconds left before I let you go. So this is your last curated exhibit with the Scarab Club. And you just gave me a little announcement here because there's something. So if you can set up the backdrop, there's really quickly 30 seconds are left. You have the beam that you just talked about, John Sinclair signing, and the importance of the beam. So give us the importance of the beam and what's so important about it this coming up exhibit.
So the beam is every year the Scarab Club chooses a cultural and influential artist or cultural icon to sign it. And last year it was Nora Chapa Mendoza. And this year, we've chosen Leni Sinclair. So I just found out about this like last night. And I was like, I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to share this with you today. So I'm so excited. She's going to get a chance to sign the beam, and that'll be October 12th.
I love it.
From 5 to 8 at the Scarab Club. And so excited. And her whole family is very, very happy.
Dalia Reyes.
Please come out.
Yes, Dalia Reyes.
My last night, guys, come on.
Curator, artist, last night with the Scarab Club as the exhibit, gallery director, excuse me. And it's happening October 12th. It's opening night with a gallery talk happening in November as well. It's titled Leni Sinclair Retrospective. Dalia, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Have a great day.